begins with talking about what you know about your family history, going as far back to what you know about like the ancestral Armenian hometowns your family's from.
I don't know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a cousin who dug and found the manifests coming over on the boats
Mm.
from, interestingly, they came from France. Both, uh, both of my grandmother came from France. They went through Egypt. My family knew something was happening. My grandparents, my great grandparents knew something was happening in like in the early 1900s, because they kept my grandmother and my grandmother's family. She had, I think, four sisters and two brothers, and they sent over one brother, early, the oldest, and the oldest girl, and they were here
Mm.
for a while, and then little by little, the rest of the people came. My grandmother came in 1915. She was 5 years old. I did find the manifest, and I will look for it so I can send it to you. Um, what they had, where they came from, and when the genocide happened, in my grandmother, my mother's mother, and her two siblings, her two sisters, they went through Egypt. That they fled to Egypt, and then they made their way to France, and that's how they came over. So
Wow.
they got here in 1915, and they landed in New York, and they settled in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Mm.
And there were, I don't know, there were a lot of Armenians there. Their family members, they were from big families, so
Mm.
their family members were there, and some of their friends and cousins settled in Boston. So we went back and forth a lot.
Mm.
We saw them a lot. But from what I gather, I believe my grandfather, I think, was from Vaughan. I am not sure of the town my grandmother was in. I have a family tree with a history. It was in my piano bench home in when I lived in New Jersey, and we had a corporate move, so they packed us. And I thought it was still there. I went to go find it, and it's empty. They put it in a box somewhere. So I have to do a hunt for it.
Mm.
But I did have a full history, so I'm not really sure where she was from. But my grandfather, my mother's father, he had three brothers and one sister,
Mm.
and they came over. They were here probably earlier than 1916, because that discharge was 1916, and I know that my grandfather was 16 when he signed up. He wasn't allowed. He
Oh.
lied about his age,
Wow.
so he served. He didn't serve that long, and then he was discharged. But he really wanted to serve. He
Mm.
felt very strongly like that. So, and his brothers served. His My mom's uncles, they served. Cousins, they served. They were all in the army. Um, but that's that side. And
Mm-hmm.
then my mother's side is different. My mother had, I think my grandmother on mother's side had two brothers and four sisters.
Wow.
I only knew one brother, and I knew all the sisters. And they were, I mean, very Armenian looking. And my grandmother, on a really good day, was 4'10". Her sister was 4'9".
Wow.
They were very small, and it was very funny when all the sisters got together. They all looked alike, but it was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
But they lived well into their 80s. The last living member of my grandmother and my mom's family died just recently, and she was 103. Her name was Madeline Carafilian,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a member of our church, John Carafilian, who's related to her.
Oh
And
wow.
I found that out at the food festival. He came down, he wanted to meet me, and he said, "I can't believe you're Lorraine's daughter." So,
Wow.
um, you know, uh, that's what I know. I don't know about a lot about my grandfather's family, other than he had three brothers and a sister.
Oh.
Um, their mother, my great grandmother, lived with them. Just
Mm.
that's a very, it's a very, I guess, European thing to do, but a very Armenian thing to do. When something happens to the grandfather or the husband, the wife moves in with the family. I do believe that my grandmother's father was killed in the genocide. He stayed behind, and I
Mm.
believe he was killed. Um, so I know nothing about him. I don't know any facts about that. And it's funny. My mother's gone now. I can't even ask her. I She had a box of pictures, and I said, "Could you put who's who on the back?" "Oh yeah, I'll do that." And she didn't do it, so I have to guess now. And since there's nobody to ask now, it's really strange. But anyway, my mom lived in Bayonne, Jersey City,
Mm.
and New Jersey, and Bayonne, New Jersey, and she went to Bayonne High School, and there were not Armenians there in Bayonne other than her family members. There were really not a lot of Armenians. The church that she would have gone to probably would have been New York. They have a
Mm.
cathedral in New York. Um, let's see. And again, they chose when they got here, because I kept saying, why don't you speak Armenian? Why don't I know? I know words, I know phrases. They spoke Armenian when they didn't want me to know what they were talking about, as in a lot of people, I'm sure, have that experience. But yeah, they very rarely spoke Armenian, only certain words, because my grandmother lived with us, and kichmi, which means a little bit, ego, which means come, uh, and which means shame on you for
Mm.
upsetting anybody or upsetting my mother in any way. Um, just certain different phrases. Anushala, which means eat well, and
Mm.
something like that. But that they tried to assimilate right away when they came here. They did not want to stand out. They wanted to work, and that's what they did. They owned. I think my grandmother's sister's husband owned a dry cleaners,
Mm.
and my grandparents worked the dry cleaning at dry cleaning. And yeah, that's my grandmother ironed. She taught me how to iron. I can iron
Mm.
a pleat like you can't believe. It looks like it came right from the cleaners,
Wow.
but she was pretty colorful. She was, I can see that as I've gotten older, I can see what the genocide did to her, even though she was not there. They they carried. I always wondered that she was very melancholy most of her life, and I never understood why. I read a book by Peter Bajalian, and he wrote Sandcastle Girls,
Mm.
and I read that and I thought, oh my God, I identify with that so much, because I never. It was they were melancholy, they were sad, and I truly believe that there is something called generational melancholia that carries down through the generations when a trauma like that happens. Being scarred like that, losing people, and she, if I'd say something about Turk, she'd go, "Goddamn Turk."
Mm.
That was her mind. She saw what happened and couldn't get past that. But now as an adult, and I look back, and it makes sense to me when you've suffered that kind of, you lost your father. When you've suffered through that, it makes sense to me.
Mm.
But they did make a life for themselves, and my mom ended up marrying somebody who was not Armenian, who was Lithuanian, and but nevertheless, he's Eastern European, but he was born here, and they were very pro education. My mom worked full time, put herself through college at night. My father worked full time. put his college, worked, and he went to school at night, and that's how he met my mother.
Oh wow.
So, and they lived in Jersey City, then Bayonne, and then they moved to Union, New Jersey. Now, there were only maybe 3 families in the town that I lived in Union that were Armenian. Um, and my father's family is Catholic. So they were very adamant about me um, being raised Catholic. So I obviously didn't have a say in it. So my mom and my grandmother and my father and I went to the Catholic church. And I went to Catholic school. Um, I mean, I knew my mother was Armenian Apostolic, but my mother didn't practice it. She didn't go to Armenian church at that time. Um, and growing up Armenian was very weird because people would say, "Well, what are you?" Then I'm in a school with um, a lot of Italians, Germans, Irish, which meant they were multiple children. I was an only
Mm.
child.
Mm.
So I was like the only child. And it was like, "Well, what are you?" "Armenian and Lithuanian." And they go, "Is that a food? What is that? Where are you from? What is that?" And I had to explain to them. Um, Most of my friends knew nothing about Armenia, nothing about the massacre, the genocide, until a couple years ago. My dearest friend, somebody that I was my maid of honor, called me out of the blue and said, "I just finished Sandcastle Girls. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't know." And I said to her, "Does my family make sense to you now?" And she said, "Oh, absolutely."
Mm.
So she could see that what he talked about, the melancholia, that it just never, it stayed.
Mm.
So, but still, most people didn't know anything about Armenia. I was not raised in an Armenian area. There were churches there were 2 churches up north in Bergen County, which was an hour from us. And there was a church that was about 20 minutes from us, and that's the one that my mother joined. And when I got older, she started going back to the Armenian church,
Mm.
and she was real active in it, And I would go, but I didn't start. Armenians on the East Coast are different. They were very snobby, and they were very standoffish because I was not 100% Armenian. There's a word odor, which means other. And I was half other. And our wonderful priest who you met, Father Krikor, he says if you have one drop of blood in you, of Armenian blood, you are Armenian. And so, but that's not how my mom's church in New Jersey looked at it. So I really kind of felt uncomfortable. And of course, I was a teenager when that happened, and I was active with my CYO and my friends. And so I would go up there, and I didn't have Armenian school with them. I didn't have, like, these children, these people had gone through Armenian school and ACYO and everything together. So I went up for a couple events, and I just felt uncomfortable.
Mm.
So I stopped. I just didn't. And so, yes, I did Armenian, my grandmother lived with us. You know, I ate Armenian food. We went to all of our relatives, everything, but I didn't have a lot of Armenian um, activities,
Mm.
things like that. So a lot of the things that we like the went on Sunday, Vartavar with throwing the water balloons and everything. I never knew nothing about that.
Mm.
So this is all a learning experience for me. Yes, I am Armenian, but a lot I didn't know, because I lived in an area where there weren't a lot of Armenians. I was a rarity.
Mm.
But through my husband's jobs, getting moved, I know in Milwaukee there's 2 Armenian churches in Racine. I didn't go because I just didn't go when I lived there. But then I got moved here, and my mom had passed 4 months before I moved here. And being an only child, it was tough. It was very tough. And I lost my father when I was 37. He had Alzheimer's for 18 years. I had early onset, long, slow, painful, and so my mom was all I had, and then she passed in 2021. When I moved here, it was during COVID still, and my mom's 1 year anniversary came up for her death, and I wanted to light a candle. I couldn't find a church that was open, and so my husband uh, looked online and he said, "You know what? There's an Armenian church 15 minutes from here." He said, "You want to go on Sunday?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Um, I, it, we walked in on a Sunday and we were greeted immediately, very warmly. "Oh, are you new?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I just moved to the area," and started to talk to them, sat through the service. I don't speak Armenian, so tried to follow along in a book, which is challenging at first. If you've tried to do that, it is challenging,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it is a beautiful, beautiful ceremony, um, ancient ceremony that is, it's 2 hours long, but it doesn't seem that because it's such a beautiful ceremony. And so I felt so at peace, and I felt my mom there. I felt like her, she was saying, "I'm so happy you're there. I'm so happy you're looking at your roots." So I started going every week, and they were, they were amazed that I went every week, but I was raised Catholic. So you go to church every week. So I still go to church. I still go every week. But I started to get to know people. They were very warm. It's a very warm parish. It's so different from what I've come from. And they would ask me, "Do you want to help? Is there something, can you help?" And I have no activities here as of yet. I thought, yeah, sure. So before I knew it, I was in the Ladies Society and helping and cooking for the bazaar and just getting to know people. Within a year, they asked me to be on the parish council, and I said, sure. And you have to be chrismated. Now, I was baptized in the Catholic Church, but and I was confirmed in the Catholic Church, but to be Armenian, you have to do something called a chrismation, which is it's beautiful. It was a short ceremony. My husband and I did it together, where they anoint you with oil on your it's on your lips, on your forehead, on your hands, on your ankles, and they use this oil, which is mixed every 7 years, using the same little bit of the same oil, and it is mixed with the spear that pierced Jesus's side. They have the spear. The Armenians have the spear. It's I believe it's in Armenia, and I felt, because I did it on my mom's birthday. I thought, I'm going to be so sad. This is going to be very moving. I'm going to cry the whole time. I was filled with such joy and such peace. It was amazing. It was just an amazing experience. So, um, you know, since then, I've been active and very active, and loving the fact that when we get together, I thought it's a really unusual thing to sit with these people at this church because everybody's from someplace different. People are from Lebanon, people are from Turkey, people are, came from Israel, they came from, I mean, it was, to me, that was so amazing. And it made me realize people scattered, they fled, they just fled, and wherever they could. And, you know, the when you sit and you cook for the bazaar, you sit and you talk to these ladies, and some of them, a lot of them are in their 80s, some of their 70s, but they tell stories. They tell the story of how they got here and how their families got here. And I realized that everybody's so different, but all the same. We're all the same. We're all Armenians, and that bond became really strong at that point. you know, all during this, I'd feel it's such a strange thing to feel Armenians around me because I never had it. So, to go places, to live in an area where there are a lot of Armenians. My daughter lives in LA, and she drives through Glendale, and she'll
Mm.
say, "Mom, it's the land of our people," because Glendale is filled with Armenians. And my daughter says, "Yep, my hairdresser's Armenian. The woman who does my nails is Armenian, and my doctors
Wow.
are all Armenian, my mechanics Armenian." That's so foreign to me. I'm like, really?
Mhm.
That's unbelievable. It just is. I think it's wonderful to feel like mainstream now. Like people say, "What are you?" "I'm Italian," or I'm Irish," and people, "Oh yeah," but when I said Armenian, they went, Well, now it's like, "What are you?" "I'm Armenian." "Oh, really? Okay."
Mhm.
So like it just was very interesting. And being in the Bay Area, there's a big Armenian presence. There's lots of churches,
Mhm.
lots of activity, and it just feels really good. You can get involved as much as you want.
Yeah.
So, that's how I got here.
Mhm.
And I they they saw me coming, so they basically I'm a volunteer, so like, yeah, you can do grandma's attic. I'm like, okay. But it's so interesting to just meet all the people. That's what I truly love. The people are wonderful. They took me right in, and like I knew them for a long time. So I thought that was amazing. And the Armenian people, it made me realize that they can try to crush the Armenian spirit people. The spirit can't do it. They've
Mm.
lived through what they've lived through. We're strong. We're a very strong people, and uh, you know, they the people that died, they died for their faith, um, and it's amazing to be part of a religion or a race that is that strong. And I feel that. You feel that
Mm.
we're survivors, and it's um, it's just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah,
That's
that's
all.
great.
So.
Yeah, I would love to ask, taking a step back, about your grandparents again.
Hmm.
So you mentioned that your grandma and grandpa were working at a laundromat in
Yeah.
New York
Yep.
and
Well, not a laundromat, a dry
at a
cleaners.
dry cleaners
Yeah.
in New York. And I was curious if you knew a little bit more about what their early years were like or how they met there.
I believe, and I'm told, that my grandparents had an arranged marriage.
Mm.
Now, I didn't know that. My mother didn't say that, but my mother's best friend, who I still talk to, told me, "Yeah, your grandparents had an arranged marriage." She said that my my grandmother's my grandmother's family had the lineage, and my grandfather's he had more money, so he wanted to be part of the lineage.
Mm.
Evidently, I didn't know this, but my aunt Alice, my mom's best friend, keeps telling me that my grandmother was a queen, or like, and I'm like, I don't, it's written somewhere. I'm like, I don't know, but somebody in my family, but or was a princess, something like that, was of a lineage, of a strong lineage. So, but I don't know. And again, I probably, if I could find that um, tree, the family tree, I could,
Mm.
when I go back, I could give you a lot more information. But I mean, I had a lot of cousins on my mom's side because, you know, each one of my grandmother's sisters had 3 kids or 4 kids. So those were all my age cousins.
Mm.
But my grandmother, they lived. My grandmother lived to 87. They all lived. Her sister lived to 90. My great grandparents, grandmother on my grandfather's side. My mother's father's side
Mm.
lived to 106.
Wow.
So a lot of longevity. Of course, my grandfather died at 66 young. He had a heart attack. You
Mm.
know, um, you know, I wish I knew more of where they came from, but they did. I think my grandfather was a member. He was a member of the Masons. There's a Mason, Armenian
Mm.
sect of the Masons, and my mother was a member of something called the Eastern Star, which
Oh.
was the women's, you know, section of it. I did find the hat. My grandfather had one of like a fez hat with the tassel and everything. I have that somewhere. Um, but I wish I knew more. I don't. I know a lot about the what happened, here, when they got married and whatever, and they assimilated, but I don't
Mm.
know coming over. You know, I can find when I have to do some research, but I do have it saved somewhere. The manifest where for both of them that came over, grandfather and grandmother. The thing about it is when they came into Ellis Island, they whoever was taking their names, like
Mm.
basically bastardized their names and renamed. My one grandmother's sister's name was Zabel and said, "You're
Mm.
Elsie." And then my grandmother's name was Virgin, so they said, "You're Virginia." And then my one was Rose, so that was easy, Rose. Beidzod was my grandmother's other sister, and you're Bertha. And yeah,
Wow.
they just changed the names to names that they knew, and the spellings were so like my mother's maiden name was Uncababian, and I'm like, okay, when I tried to find it, I was like,
Mm.
is it ENCA Babian, UNKA Babian? Like, how do you find it? I had no way of
Mm.
of finding it. And then you know, uh, so that was that. And my grandmother's maiden name was Zakarian, and they murdered that name too. But I did. I have a cousin who found the manifests
Mm-hmm.
that came over, from them coming over.
Wow. You mentioned that you did see quite a bit of, or that your community was very family based on the East Coast. Were you able to experience that growing up?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm an only child, and I had a lot of. My father had not 8 brothers and sisters, so I had a lot of cousins on my father's side.
Mm.
And we were more involved with them,
Mm.
but we did, we did do things with my mother's side of the family, but not as much as my father's side. So, I moved. Yeah, we had a lot of events or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do see things now that um, my I still keep in touch with some of my cousins, and I follow them and their kids. They all had kids. They married. Their kids are married now, and we're all spreading out basically. But like I said, the last living member just died recently. She was 103. She was a trip. She was 103. She was a realtor, and she drove up to like she was still working. So can you imagine?
Wow.
She was a beautiful woman. So she was young, and I mean, she really. I thought she was in her 90s,
Mm.
and John said to me, the guy that's related to her, "No, she's like 100." I go, "Get out, really?" Because she looked so young. She was always beautiful and very put together, and driving around in her Cadillac, and amazing that she looked young. I guess um, people, if you're active, you'll stay young.
Mm.
I was sitting next to a woman recently. We had an event, a dedication to Komitas, who is a composer. I don't know anything a lot about, but we had this wonderful event. I was sitting next to a woman. she said to me in conversation, "Guess how old I am?" And I looked at her and I said, 70. She says, "I'm 93." I was like, my mouth just fell open. I was like, she said, "You have to keep active. You have to stay active and keep active." Of course, she was not married and she didn't have children because, that can do it to you. That can age you.
Mm.
But yeah, I was like, oh my God. But I truly believe, though, our culture, everybody's trying to eat our culture, to eat the Mediterranean diet, or,
Mm.
we as Armenians, we are obsessed with good food. I mean, we eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit, a lot of grains, and it's so much more than the American diet. And I can see, and we also made homemade yogurt.
Mm.
My grandmother made our yogurt every single week. And she would put it, in the old days, there was a pilot light on the stove. She would put it in a glass jar on the stove with a towel over it to set. And I mean, I drank fresh yogurt I ate all my yogurt my whole life. I never had container yogurt until I was like in my teens.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I believe that freshness, that yogurt, I think that's longevity. They ate that, and olive oil and olives and fruit and beans, a lot of beans. Very, very healthy. Very, very healthy. Of course, they had the sweets too, but but that I think is why they lived a long time.
Mm.
A lot of them. And to think a lot of them, even the ones that lived through the hard times, I think they were able to set it aside and live their lives, which I think is pretty amazing. I'm not sure that some people, everybody can do that,
Mm.
you know, take those memories and put them on a shelf and then live your life.
Yeah,
So I commend them for that.
that is truly amazing. And I love hearing about food as well
Oh,
because
do
that's
you?
such a fun part
Oh, yeah.
about any
Oh, God,
culture,
yeah.
of course.
I mean, they're all about food,
Mm-hmm.
everything. And it's very interesting, again, from all the different people that I met at church from different areas, from Lebanon, from Iran, from, like, their recipes are, how do I put this? Uh, the way they are the things that we're eating, but they take different spices and different methods from where they were living. So, like, in other words, grape leaves, okay,
Mm-hmm.
stuffed grape leaves, which people call dolma, we call sadma, or sarma. They call it. I called it sadma, but called sarma. There are many ways to make it,
Mm-hmm.
very many ways, and the spices are different, very different from each place that you came. So it's just very interesting. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the cookbooks, they're wonderful because you get you're getting this woman's, from where she came from, and I just find it fascinating. Like, for instance, my grandmother would make something called the choreg.
Mm.
It's spelled choreg, chorag, basically, but choreg. And my grandmother would make them like a crisp cookie, like almost like a crisp cracker. They
Mm.
were rolled and twisted. Her sister made them soft,
Mm.
and so every person, every different, ethnic, I mean, all the different Armenians from different places made things, same thing, differently.
Mm.
So I just find that fascinating. If you were in Iran, you were using the spices there that you could get.
Mm-hmm.
So I just found it interesting. But yeah, I mean, I we did do things, very Armenian things, traditions. Like, there's an egg game at Easter that you take your dyed Easter eggs and everybody gets one,
Mm.
and then you hold it, with the one side facing up, and the next person takes one side and hits it, and whoever doesn't crush wins.
Mm.
Okay, so, and everybody does it until we have one winner, and it's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I've seen them do it at church,
Mhm.
so it's a tradition that my family got. And just, there, it's just, I love when somebody says something like, oh, are you going to make whatever it was? I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's a pudding that my grandmother used to make, and somebody said, "Oh, I'm gonna make that," and I went, "Oh my God, my grandmother used to make that. I love that," and I haven't had it in years,
Mm.
but it was really neat for me, comforting for me to say, "I remember that. My grandmother used to make
Yeah.
that." Um, so I've become much more grateful as I've gotten
Mm.
older for my history and my grandmother, the one that I knew, that lived with us,
Mm.
and being Armenian. I learned a lot from her. I did. She drove me crazy, but she
Yeah,
did.
absolutely.
She did drive me crazy, but we were like siblings, because I had no siblings, but she was too much. That's the only words I can say. She was too much. But
Yeah. Going in a bit of a different direction for a moment, I was wondering if you could tell me more about your young adult life and early career, and maybe also how you met your husband.
oh, sure. Well, my early life was, again, I'm an only child, and I was pretty lonely growing up. I mean, I did have some friends in grammar school, but not a lot. I really got a lot of friends when I went to high school, because I went
Mm.
to a public high school in my town, and I met my best friends, which I am still best friends with to this day. We've celebrated over 50
Oh.
years of friendship. I think it's a blessing, such a blessing, to have them in my life and for so many years, and to enjoy being with them so much still, So I was very, very lucky to have that. And, you know, uh, I was artistic. You see my pottery, but I, I love art, and I love to I don't know, I did a bunch of different things. I did batik, I did um, some painting, although I'm not good at it, but I did enjoy it. I went to college. My first year at college, I was at a place called CW Post in New York. It was on Long Island, and I was only there a year. And my father was showing signs of being ill. My mother was very upset and clutching. She was clutching at me. You know, she made it very hard for me. So I
Mm.
came home. It was just too difficult to be away from her because she was miserable, and I felt really bad.
Mm.
So the Armenian guilt, like, there's a lot of guilt in Armenia. They like to guilt you.
Mm.
My grandmother and mother were the masters at that. So I came home. I went to a local school, well, 10 minutes away, good school, Seton Hall University,
Mm.
um, which is still a very big school now. And I commuted 10 minutes, it was 10 minutes from my house. And I was in communications, that was my major. And when I was a senior, I'd had a big surgery that summer, my legs and my feet, and I was on crutches. And we had gotten a new studio, a new TV studio. This is right before school started, so I went in to see it. And my husband at the time, I didn't know him, and he was sitting. And I'd seen him around a little bit. He was sitting there. He had his feet up on the counter, and I'm thinking, who is this jerk? Like, this arrogant jerk. and that's and I had a class with him that semester, and he just, hi Debbie, and I'd be like, hello, I don't know. One of my friends said to me, we were out at a party, and she said to me, I think you like him, and I went, oh no, oh no, and she said, yeah, because you never stop talking about him, and I went,
Mm.
I do like him. Oh my, oh I do. And the rest is history. We started dating, and I knew I was going to marry him 3 months into I just, it was a great relationship.
Mhm.
And he was in communications also. So I graduated college in '82, And at the time, it was a recession, so it was really hard to get a job. Plus, because of my limitations with my feet and my legs, I couldn't like lift things and run
Mm.
around and I wanted to be a production assistant. I couldn't do that. So I went, I, I got the job, only job that I could, and I got, it was in a bond industry, and investments. And
Mm.
it was a job. I needed to pay my student loans. And through that, I found another job about something called Kenny Information Systems, which was like you would get informations about bonds on a computer system. And I learned the system, and then they hired me. The system hired me. So a job I loved, and I worked on Wall Street, right off Wall Street, and loved it. And then I got married, and my husband was working in GTE, which was in Stamford,
Mm.
Connecticut, and we decided to move to Connecticut. And I didn't realize that I would have a 3 hour commute, 2.5 hour commute, because I thought it would be a lot quicker.
Mm.
And so I only stayed 4 or 5 months after I was married. I left, and I cried like a baby when I left because I loved my job.
Mm.
But from there, I just kind of went from job to job. Um, got pregnant with my oldest, and then my dad was in the throes of Alzheimer's, so we moved back to New Jersey. And we had one child when we moved back to New Jersey.
Mm.
We moved to a place called Cranford,
Mm.
which is this wonderfully quaint town right on the train line in New
Mm.
Jersey. And I we had wonderful neighbors. We had a next door neighbor. They were an older couple, and they were really like grandparents to my children. They were just wonderful. And we were there for 30 years. But I worked nights. Well, so my husband worked days. I worked at a YMCA
Mm.
nights. Um, I did some PR for them. I taught step aerobics. I worked at the membership. I did it everything. And then I decided, can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? And my answer was no. And I really wanted to be an interior designer. It's something my art
Mm.
background I really wanted to do. So I found it just kind of kismet. Things fell into place, and I found a program that was 50 minutes away from my house. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take one class and see if I like it. I'm going to go for it. If I
Mm.
don't, nothing lost, right? And it was weird because somebody said, "You need babysitter? I can babysit Nicole." I was like, everything fell into place. So I went back to school to become an interior designer at
Wow.
36, and it was 4 years. It was really hard. I was working 25 to 30 hours a week. I had 3 kids, and my husband traveled a lot. So my life was nuts. Um, I wouldn't change anything, but
Mm.
it was nuts. I graduated with a design degree in 2000 at 40
Mm.
and started my career. I worked in all facets of design. You know, a lot of people here don't, it didn't affect them like it affected where I was when 9/11 happened. A lot of the buildings stopped. A lot of everybody kind of went into a freezing pattern on the East Coast. So my job, I didn't work out. So
Mm.
then I went, but all of the changes, it's interesting because each job that I left or I went to that I happened to get, which was kind of fate, brought me into another area, design.
Mm.
So I've done, you name it, I've done it. I've done stores, I've done, you know, restaurants, I've done boutiques, I've done dentist offices, I worked in a hospital once. You name it, I've done it. Some residential, mostly commercial, but some residential. And my last gig was designing bathrooms. Not only the outside where everything goes, but the function of it, the
Mm.
guts. I learned all about plumbing, which was interesting, but I learned all about that. And I did that for 4 years. And then my husband got an offer he couldn't refuse from Johnson Controls
Mm.
in Milwaukee. And so we sold our house and they moved us out there. And so I stopped working because my mom was devastated that I moved. Um, Armenian moms, they have a on you, and
Mm.
I promised her I would come home every 6, 7, 8 weeks,
Wow.
and I did that for 5 years. I mean, I saw her at least every 7 or 8 weeks and stayed a week or 10 days or 2 weeks. So I did get to see her. And
Mm.
then when she had a heart attack in 2020
Mm.
August, and that was during the real throes of COVID. I just jumped in my car in Wisconsin and drove to New Jersey, and I didn't know if I could go back. My mom was in and out of the hospital to rehab, hospital back. I was there for 5 months and she did recover.
Mm.
So I went home, and then suddenly she died two months later. So, but I made it back. I did make it back to be with her, but so that's what happened. And during that time, my husband had been laid off,
Mm.
um, and Genentech here recruited him. So that's how I came to be in California.
Yeah.
So
It's it's a very interesting story. It's
yeah,
very crazy. I'm also curious, going into a little bit about your family and your own children, if raising them with aspects of your own Armenian culture was something that was important to you.
it was.
Mhm.
My mom was in our life a lot, and my grandmother when my
Mhm.
kids were young. Um, so a lot of our customs, they got a lot of our food
Mhm.
they loved. Um, and I have given them, I buy things for them a lot. Like the gentleman here, David Camion, I think is his name. He's the author of this, and he belongs to our church. He comes to our church a lot. But
Mm.
it's a beautiful picture book of Armenia. I bought them that. I try to buy them historical things. Um, I have asked my children to come out here for the food festival. Um, the youngest said no. The middle said yes at some point.
Mm.
My oldest doesn't travel a lot. It's very interesting how you can have 3 kids, raise them all in the same place, and they're totally
Mm.
different. My oldest doesn't like to travel. He's a homebody.
Mm.
He doesn't really go a lot of places. My middle son has been all over the world, and his wife has been all over the world, and they love to explore custom. They like he's into learning. I could see them going to Armenia too. I would
Mm.
like to go to Armenia,
Mm.
um, and really be immersed in that. And I think they would like to too. I don't know if my daughter will or not, but even though they're only a quarter, my husband's 100% Italian, so they're only a quarter Armenian. They, you know, it's still a big part of them. My two, well, they all look, they're all olive toned. Their skin is olive toned, but my daughter has dark brown eyes, the Armenian eyes.
Mm.
My my middle son has dark brown eyes, and that's my mother had very dark brown eyes. Mine are lighter. My
Mm.
father was blue eyed. So, but yeah, I mean, I try to tell them about it. I try to give them books to read about it. I think they're young now. I think that maybe they'll want to learn more as they get a little older.
Mhm.
Um, they know it's important to me.
Mm.
Um, you know, they've kind of drifted away from church, but you know, I'm always hopeful that they'll come back.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's everybody has their journey,
Mhm.
and their journey is what they make it. And I hope that they come back to God, to church. But I'm not sure they will, but
Mm.
I all I can do is lead by example and let them know how important it is. You know, I get yeah, 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 mom, but I think they're, especially my oldest son has a child. My grandson's 4, and you know, you do everything for them. They are the future. They're the future, and I want him to know my heritage. I want him to know, and my kids. I want them to learn about history. I
Mhm.
want them to know. You know, they knew my mother well. My mom, like my kids were in their 30s, when she passed, or 20 in their late 20s and 30s. So
Mhm.
they really knew her
Mm.
for a long time. Yeah, and I can't say I was a perfect Armenian up. I'm not that anybody's perfect, but I became much more interested when I moved here, and I was surrounded by it. When you're the only person in the entire town, whatever, that's Armenian, people look at you like, what? Because it wasn't common. It
Mhm.
just wasn't common. So here, more people are, so you don't feel so isolated.
Yeah. Going off of that, I'm curious how you personally have been able to keep your sense of Armenianness alive.
Being at church,
Mm.
being connected. Um, I've always believed in God since when I was a very little girl. Um, I was raised Catholic, and you know, but I've always had a relationship with God. So coming here, you know, learning more about it, learning more about the Armenian religion, the different saints that basically brought Armenia to uh, different. We were the first Armenian nation. I don't know if you knew that, but we were the first Armenian nation. And how that came to be,
Mhm.
and because people would say, like, my grandmother, my father's mother, was pretty ignorant about that, and said, is she Christian, about my mother? And my mother was like, Christian? We're the first nation. We're the
Mm.
first Christian nation. We're more Christian than you are, but out of ignorance, they didn't know. So I just learned so much more about my history, and what it just means to be an Armenian, and love to meeting all the different people, and the connection from being Armenian. They're warm, they're open. You know, I didn't have to prove myself to anybody. They were just with open arms, which is really something I never experienced.
Mm.
Um, and our priest is wonderful. And most of the people that I know, David's wonderful. His mom and I are good friends. She's wonderful. And and I feel better because I don't speak Armenian. I can get words here or there, but David's mom doesn't speak Armenian. And I'm like, really? You don't? She's like, no, I speak French. My mother was French. I was like, well, I don't feel so bad now that I
Mm.
don't, but, I would love to learn. Um, but I do get the gist of it sometimes. I catch a word here or there when somebody's speaking.
Mm.
Um, but how I feel about it, I love being Armenian now because I'm in the land of my people, as my daughter
Yeah.
calls it. But it's such a beautiful religion. It's a strong people. We're survivors,
Mhm.
and you know the we have a great deal of compassion and empathy.
Mm.
Um, I think what the Armenian people have been through have has given them empathy, and I'm gonna say, like, more than a lot of my friends, your families, you know, much more. We have more empathy, I think, because of what we went. I mean, did it happen to me? No, I did lose my great grandfather, but it happened to all Armenians. It wasn't just the ones that perished.
Mhm.
It was it happened to everybody, and we carry that with us, and when you see something like that happening again, you say, never again, never again. And well, I mean, I don't know if you knew this, but Hitler once said, who remembers the Armenians?
Mm-hmm.
And that's says a lot, you know. But I'm I do love being Armenian. I feel more Armenian. It's funny. Everybody looks at me and they say, Irish, or my face, Irish, Italian, Jewish. Like they'll ask me who did my nose, and I go, God did my nose. But they can't guess.
Mm.
And I think maybe because I'm a combination of my father and my mother, but yet I am olive toned, and I mean, we all have the same customs.
Mm.
So I do, and I love the people at my church. I do.
Yeah.
I look forward to spending time with them, and I love working with them because I just feel like we work for the good of the community, and we do support orphanages and things back in Armenia, and
Mm-hmm.
so you are connected to the motherland. That's what they call it, the motherland. You are, even though I haven't been there or anything else. I'm connected to it
Mm.
because we help
Mm-hmm.
them. So just something I'd like to learn. I'd love to go. I do. Someday I will.
Yeah, that's
So
really great.
yeah.
And last question to wrap things up. I'm curious if you have any hopes for the future of the Armenian community and maybe more essentially the Armenian community in the Bay Area.
I pray our parishes are stay strong, that they're able to sustain their members. We have a lot of older people in our parish, and a lot of the other parishes too, and they're all dying off. And
Mm.
you just really hope that um, the next generation will keep up the work, like and keep going and doing and being part of the community. Um, like my generation is working hard, but I don't know about the next generation. So my hope is that they step up and they take over and continue the church, the traditions, and everything else. And most of the people I know at the church went to Armenian school. They've been raised in it. So for me, I wasn't. I think that's wonderful. I just hope they do that with their kids. So I really hope that the church gets strong and stays strong and survives. Um, in the Bay Area, there are several churches. I hope they can each sustain themselves and don't have to be joined together. You know what I
Mm.
mean? As people dwindle and everything. So um, I just hope they're around for a long time. And I'm not here forever because I'm from the East Coast and my family's on the East Coast. And when we retire, we're going back to live by our grandchild in Maryland. So
Mm.
I won't be here, but you know, what I got from that is what I've taken from this is just everything. They gave me a family. They've given me a family here, and a place where I walk into church and I'm comfortable. I feel like I belong there. I never felt that in New Jersey. Here, I feel it. I feel like I belong there. Maybe it's because I feel my mom around me there. And I know she's proud that I'm actually being in the Armenian community and involved in church. And um, I just think, I just hope we survive. That's all, and hope that the Armenian people can keep, the Azerbaijanis at bay
Mm.
and they don't try to take over more land. So, and I'm not that involved in that, but it is a big deal. So,
Was there any other things that you wanted to share or felt like was missed or undercovered?
when I was young, I used to feel why can't I be like everybody else? Why can't I be like Italian or German or something that people
Mm.
knew? Nobody knows what I am. And now I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful that I am part of the Armenian community and that I am Armenian. I'm proud of that. Um, you know, that's all I can say is that
Mhm.
I'm very happy to be here and be part of it.